Blitzer's Book Club. We are reading the I Survived book, The Attacks of September 11th, 2001. Like I've encouraged you guys for the past couple of weeks to ask your parents, ask your neighbors about their experiences on 9/11. You probably will be surprised, especially since 2001 really wasn't that long ago. In this book, we've learned that the main character is Lucas, and he absolutely loves football. Both his Uncle Benny and his dad are firefighters for the New York City Fire Department. And Lucas, while in practice one day, he gets a concussion. And so he's out for a couple of weeks so that his head can heal. But then his mom takes him to a special doctor where the doctor says that he thinks Lucas should stop playing football altogether, simply because in the past 2 years, Lucas has had 3 concussions and he's only 11 years old. And so on September 11th, Lucas sneaks into the city to talk to his Uncle Benny, who is currently working at the fire station. And Uncle Benny surprisingly agrees with Lucas's parents about quitting football, which Lucas was not expecting at all. But as they're talking, they catch a plane flying very low and heading straight for New York City. So today we are going to read chapters 6, 7, and 8. Chapter 6, 8:46 a.m. on September 11th. "What the?" Uncle Benny said. He and Lucas stood and watched as the plane tore through the sky, its engine screaming. Everyone else on the sidewalk stopped and looked up. Lucas had never seen an airplane flying so low, except taking off or landing. He could see the plane so clearly, the engines tucked under the wings, the sun glinting off the windows. He could even read the letters on the tail, AA. American Airlines. The engines roared. That plane had to be in trouble. It was going to crash. Questions raced through Lucas's mind. Had the plane's instruments broken? Was the pilot confused? Was he sick? Once Lucas heard about a pilot who had a heart attack in the middle of a flight. But that didn't make sense. There would be a co-pilot to take over. Or maybe airplanes flew like this all the time in New York City and Lucas just hadn't noticed before? Or no, it had to be a movie. That was it. Some action movie was being filmed in New York City. But where were the cameras? How are they filming the plane? Something was wrong, and everyone knew it. People up and down the sidewalk were stopped in their tracks, hypnotized by the sight of a jet ripping across the sky. The plane turned slightly, one wing dipping down. The engine's roar turned into a screech. It was moving faster now and going lower and lower. It barely missed the tops of some buildings as it careened through the air. But just ahead, 2 buildings stood taller than the rest, the Twin Towers. The plane was heading straight for one of the towers. "Turn!" Lucas wanted to scream. "Pull up!" But it didn't turn. And suddenly, the plane plunged like a knife into the side of one of the buildings. For a split second, Lucas waited for the plane to reappear on the other side, to keep flying as though nothing had happened. But then, boom! A gigantic fireball, orange and black, exploded out of the side of the building. Lucas jumped back in horror. All around him, people screamed. Black, fiery smoke gushed out of a huge gas in the building's side, billowing into the sky. Lucas turned away. He couldn't look anymore. He looked at Uncle Benny instead. Uncle Benny was already shouting into his phone. "Call dispatch. A plane just crashed into the World Trade Center. This is 1060. Yes, a 1060. 1060 was the worst kind of alarm. And that's when it hit Lucas. There had to be hundreds of people trapped in that tower. And no matter how dangerous it was, firefighters like Dad and Uncle Benny were going to try and save them. "It looks like Tower 1, Uncle Benny was saying, his phone pressed to his ear as he and Lucas ran back to the firehouse. "The North Tower. No, not a small plane. It was a jet. A big jet. Yes, I'm sure," Uncle Benny was shouting now. "I saw it with my own eyes." Lucas kept glancing back, each time hoping that the tower would be magically healed. But each time he looked, there was more and more black smoke. The sound of sirens filled the air. "Get ready," Uncle Benny was saying. "We're going to need everything we have. There has to be at least 10 floors of fire." 10 floors of fire. Dad had told Lucas that every floor of the Twin Towers was about the size of a football field. Lucas tried to imagine what 10 football fields would look like, each one on fire. How many firefighters would it take to put those fires out? And what if each of those fires was almost a quarter mile in the air? That's how high the towers were. Lucas knew how much firefighters hated high rises. Elevators were usually too dangerous to use in a fire. They could stop working suddenly and fill up with smoke. But the only other choice was to lug heavy hoses and 50 pounds of gear up endless flights of stairs. Georgie once told Lucas that it took 2 minutes for a firefighter to walk up just one flight of stairs. Lucas looked back at the tower. The fire was near the top, maybe the 80th or 90th floor. That meant it could be 2 hours before firefighters could get there. Could the people on those floors wait that long for help? The Seagrave was already out of the garage when Lucas and Benny got back to the firehouse. Georgie was at the wheel. Men from both shifts were piled on. Benny ran over to grab his turnout clothes and helmet. Lucas followed after him. "Uncle Benny," he said, "what will you do?" Uncle Benny stepped into his bunker pants and boots. "We'll do what we always do," he said. He put his hand on Lucas's head for a moment, then ran to the truck. Chief Douglas called out to Lucas from the truck. "Your dad is heading to the scene," he said. "You sit tight." "Take care of things for us, buddy," Uncle Benny said. The truck pulled away, its siren wailing, the garage door shut, and Lucas stood there in shock, alone. He ran to the phone and called Mom. She didn't answer. He left a message, struggling to keep his voice from cracking, that he was at the firehouse, that he was fine, that she should call him. He hung up and stood there, his mind spinning. Uncle Benny's words whispered in his head. "We'll do what we always do." What they always did. Fight fires. Save people's lives. And that's what they do now. The FDNY was the biggest fire department in the world. They were the best, and they would do what they always did. Chapter 8, 9 a.m. Dad once told Lucas that what he liked most about fighting fires was that everyone had a job to do. If you don't work together, you don't put out the fire. Now, Lucas looked around the firehouse. He needed a job, he realized, something he could do to help. He went to the kitchen. The table was covered with plates of half-eaten bacon and eggs. The sink was overflowing with dirty pots. He got to work clearing the dishes and glasses from the table. Every few minutes, the alarm box squawked and the dispatcher came on with a new alarm. "All units meet at Vesey and West Streets." The TV was on the counter, the sound turned down. The picture on the screen showed the burning tower. Lucas reached out and turned the volume up so he could hear it over the voice of the dispatcher. "If you're just joining us, ladies and gentlemen," the TV's voice said, "you're looking at an extraordinary sight. Just a few minutes ago, a plane crashed into Tower 1 at New York City's famous World Trade Center. We have no official information about what kind of plane it was, but witnesses report it was a commercial jet." Lucas picked up Georgie's huge cast iron skillet and started scrubbing. "The towers were built in 1970, the man continued. At 110 floors each, they were once the tallest buildings in the world. There are hundreds of firefighters on the scene. We have reports that firefighters have been entering the building and heading up the stairs to reach people who might need assistance. It's an amazing sight." The smoke was thicker now, painting the blue sky a dirty brown. There were white dots floating in the smoke, almost like confetti. Paper, Lucas realized. Millions of pieces of paper swept out through the building and swept out through the hole in the building. The man kept talking about the towers, that they took 4 years to build, that they could withstand winds of 140 miles per hour, that 50,000 people worked there. His voice was calm, almost like a teacher giving a history lesson. Lucas was reaching up to hang the heavy skillet on the hook over the sink. Suddenly, the man on the TV gasped. "Oh my! What was that? Another explosion? Ladies and gentlemen, it looks like a second plane. Yes, another jet. It has just crashed into the second tower." The heavy skillet slipped out of Lucas's hand and into the sink, shattering plates and glasses. Lucas barely noticed. His eyes did not move from the TV screen. "Ladies and gentlemen," the man said again, his voice shaking, "we're going to replay the video of what we just saw." The screen flipped. It showed the North Tower burning, and then suddenly, on the left side of the screen, another plane appeared. Just like the first, it was a big jet, and quick as a blink, it slammed into the other tower, exploding into a fireball. Fire erupted out of all sides of the building, a ring of flaming blackness. Now there were 2 clouds of churning black smoke. Lucas's heart pounded. It was hard to breathe. There were more people talking on the TV now, not just the man. Oh my, that looked, one woman said. What did we just see, said another. Ladies and gentlemen, the man said, we have just witnessed the horrific sight of a second plane hitting the other tower, the South Tower. There was a massive explosion. There must be a computer problem, a complete failure of the air traffic control system, said the first woman. What the man said next made Lucas's entire body start to shake. That did not look like an accident, he said. It looks like that plane flew into that tower on purpose. I think this is some kind of attack. And that is where we'll finish off for today. Next week we'll read chapters 9 and 10. Once again, talk to your parents about some things that they experienced and just kind of what happened that day. But I hope you guys continue to join us. Bye.